I never imagined a single night could change everything I believed about love, family, and trust. Yet here I was, standing alone in the quiet of my apartment, my chest tight with a mix of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. The world outside seemed normal, the soft hum of the city, the distant laughter of strangers, but inside, my world had shattered. Everything I thought I knew about Lily, about my father, Luca, had been a lie. It all started with a message. A simple text that should have been harmless. "Leo, we need to talk." I froze the moment I saw it. Lily's name blinked at me from my phone screen. But this wasn't one of our usual late-night chats, full of jokes, soft teases, and that quiet intimacy that only we shared. Something in the timing, in the way she had typed it, made my stomach twist. I remembered the first time I met her. Lily, with her laugh that could fill a room, and her eyes that seemed to see right through me. I was young, foolish, completely unprepared for how much I could fall for someone. But I fell anyway. Hard. And in those early days, she became my world. Every thought, every dream, every plan I made somehow had her in it. I believed, with all my naive certainty, that she felt the same, that she was mine, wholly and unconditionally. And then came Luca, my father, a man I respected, feared, and sometimes envied. Luca was magnetic, confident, and powerful traits I admired, but also resented because I had always lived in his shadow. He had a presence that could dominate a room without raising his voice. And somehow, unknowingly, that same presence drew Lily in. At first, I ignored it. I told myself I was imagining things, that it was my paranoia speaking. After all, she loved me, didn't she? But the truth has a way of revealing itself when you least expect it. That night, the night everything fell apart, I had gone to the restaurant where we often met for our quiet dinners. It was empty except for a corner table where the dim light flickered softly. I remember thinking how peaceful it was until I saw them, Luca and Lily, sitting across from each other, their hands barely brushing over the table, laughing in a way that was too intimate for just father and friend of my fiancée. My stomach dropped. My world tilted. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. I wanted to run, to scream, to confront them right there and demand the truth. But instead, I stood frozen, hidden in the shadows, watching as the woman I loved leaned toward the man I trusted most, and whispered something that made him smile in a way I had never seen before. I stumbled out of the restaurant, needing air, needing space to think. The city felt different that night, cold, gray, indifferent to the storm inside me. Every step I took echoed the betrayal I couldn't yet fully process. How could she? How could my own father? I felt rage bubbling beneath the surface. A dark fire that I had never known lived inside me. By the time I reached my apartment, I could barely see through the blur of tears and anger. I collapsed onto my couch, my phone still clutched in my hand. I wanted answers, yet I feared the truth more than anything. I wanted to call her, to hear her lie, to scream at her, but I couldn't, because deep down, I already knew. The messages, the stolen glances, the whispered conversations I had accidentally overheard. Lily had chosen him, my father. I remember pacing the room, my mind racing, trying to make sense of it. My life had been built on trust. Trust in my family, trust in the woman I loved. And now, everything was fractured. Every happy memory, every dream of the future felt tainted, broken. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I felt trapped in a nightmare that no one could wake me from. And yet, even in that despair, a seed of something darker began to grow. Anger, sharp and insistent, cutting through the grief. Not just at Lily. At Luca too. How dare they? How dare they shatter my life so casually, so cruelly? I felt small, powerless, but at the same time, a part of me whispered that maybe I didn't have to stay small. Maybe I could take control. Maybe I could make them see the cost of their betrayal. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every smile, every touch, every whispered, "I love you," that had been a lie. I felt sick, hollow, and furious all at once. And as the night wore on, I made a silent promise to myself. I would not let this go. I would make them pay, not in the way the world might think, not with violence or cruelty, but in a way they would feel in their very bones. But even as I swore revenge, I knew something else too. Revenge would come at a cost. It would not heal the betrayal. It would not bring back the love I had lost, or erase the shame, the embarrassment, the heartbreak. I would be changed, hardened, and scarred. And perhaps, in the end, I would find that winning might not feel like victory at all. That night, alone in the silence, I felt the first real weight of what lay ahead. The path I would have to walk was dark, tangled with secrets, lies, and the bitter truth of love betrayed. I did not yet know how it would end. I only knew that from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. And so, I began to plan. I remember the first time I saw Lily. It was a rainy afternoon, the kind of day when the city feels both alive and lonely at the same time. I had ducked into a small cafe to escape the drizzle, shaking off my coat, and there she was, sitting by the window with a book in her hands and a smile that seemed to brighten even the grayest day. She didn't notice me at first, lost in her world of words, her brow furrowed in concentration. But something about her drew me in, made it impossible to look away. I don't know if it was the way her hair caught the light, or the way her lips curved when she smiled at a line in the book, or just everything. I felt like I had known her before I ever met her, like some hidden part of my heart recognized her instantly. I sat at the table beside hers, trying to think of some clever, casual way to strike up a conversation. But my words kept failing me. She looked up eventually, our eyes meeting for the first time, and in that single moment, a connection sparked, subtle, fragile, but undeniable. She smiled at me, not with the forced politeness most people offered, but with a warmth that made my chest tighten. "Hi," I said, finally finding my voice, feeling ridiculous yet alive. "Hi," she replied, her voice soft, almost melodic, as if it had been crafted to calm storms. From that day forward, our lives began to intertwine. We met for coffee, for walks, for late-night drives under the stars. Every conversation revealed more of her kindness, her fierce intelligence, the little quirks that made her uniquely Lily. And every day, I found myself falling deeper, hopelessly, completely. She wasn't just part of my life. She became the center of it. Love, I realized, wasn't just a feeling with her. It was an all-encompassing force that made the world feel lighter, brighter, more beautiful than I had ever known. I remember one night in particular, a quiet evening on my apartment balcony, the city lights twinkling below us like 1,000 tiny stars. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I wrapped my arm around her, feeling her warmth seep into me. "I feel like I've known you forever," she whispered, barely audible over the hum of the city. "I feel the same," I told her, though in truth, the words felt like they fell short of the storm raging in my chest, because what I felt for her wasn't just knowing or familiarity, it was belonging. With her, I belonged. We shared our dreams, our fears, our small embarrassments, and our wild ambitions. She laughed at my worst jokes, even when they deserved groans. She held my hand during moments of doubt, stayed with me when I felt weak, and somehow made me believe that love could actually conquer the small, persistent chaos of life. And it wasn't just love in the simple, fleeting way, it was the kind that made you forget time, that rewrote your understanding of happiness. With Lily, I didn't just feel alive. I felt seen, completely, undeniably, deeply. We dreamed about the future together, casually at first, vacations, moving in together, a small home filled with memories. Then, more seriously, with promises and discussions of marriage, children, and a life built entirely around us. Every plan, every whispered hope, strengthened the illusion that nothing could ever come between us. I didn't notice the subtle cracks at first. The slight hesitation when she spoke of my father, the moments when her eyes lingered on him a little too long during family dinners, the casual compliments that felt a little too warm, a little too intimate. I brushed them off, because why would I question someone I trusted so completely? Lily loved me. I knew it. I felt it. And so I convinced myself that my instincts were right. For a while, everything felt perfect. We had our little routines, our shared jokes, our secret glances that said more than words ever could. The world outside could be cruel, confusing, or indifferent. But in our bubble, we were untouchable. I remember thinking once, sitting across from her at a small bistro table, that life couldn't get any better. Her smile lit up the room, her hand brushing mine accidentally but deliberately. And I felt something inside me settle, a rare, deep kind of peace. This is it, I thought. This is what happiness feels like. But life has a way of testing us, doesn't it? Just when we feel most secure, most certain, the cracks appear. tiny at first, nearly invisible, but growing, spreading, until they can no longer be ignored. And I should have seen them, should have understood that love, no matter how perfect it feels, doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is surrounded by the messy, unpredictable, uncontrollable elements of life: family, ambition, pride, temptation. I didn't notice it then. I was too blinded by the intensity of our love, by the illusions of forever. I couldn't have imagined that the people closest to me, the ones I trusted, without question, could betray me in the most unimaginable way. That the love I held sacred could be stolen from me by the very hands I believed would protect me. That perfect bubble of happiness we shared, that illusion of forever, was already beginning to crack. And I didn't know it yet, but soon, very soon, the cracks would widen and the storm would break. For months, life with Lily had been almost perfect. Every day felt like a stolen fragment of a dream I never wanted to end. But as the saying goes, no dream lasts forever. And in our story, the shadow came not from strangers or rivals, but from someone I had known my entire life, my father, Luca. It wasn't sudden. The first signs were subtle, almost imperceptible. Little compliments he would give Lily when she came over for dinners. Remarks about how talented she was, how she carried herself with such grace. At first, I didn't pay much attention. He was my father, and his manner could be flattering without meaning anything deeper. But then, the compliments began lingering, the glances stretching just a little too long, and the casual touches that felt innocent suddenly carried a weight I couldn't ignore. I remember one night clearly. We had all gone to a family gathering at Luca's estate. Lily was wearing a dress I had always admired. Simple, elegant, just like her. I was standing by the bar, enjoying the champagne Luca had recommended, when I caught him leaning close to her, laughing in a way that didn't belong to a father and his daughter-in-law. She was smiling back, leaning in slightly, touching his arm in that familiar, careless way that used to belong only to me. My stomach twisted, but I pushed it away. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was overreacting. After all, my father was charismatic, and Lily was kind-hearted. People smiled at him. That didn't mean anything, but the subtle shadows continued to grow. Small things, a touch here, a laugh there. A conversation I walked into too late to understand. I noticed how she suddenly seemed more reserved with me when Luca was around, how her eyes would flicker toward him when she thought I wasn't looking. It made me question myself. Was I being paranoid? Was I reading too much into friendly interactions? I tried to ignore it. I really did. I clung to the trust I had in Lily, the bond we had built over months of shared dreams and whispered confessions. I refused to believe that someone I loved could betray me, let alone for my own father. I wanted to believe that everything was fine, that the little shadows I noticed were nothing more than my insecurities playing tricks on me. But shadows have a way of revealing themselves over time. The subtlety of their presence was deceptive. It made the moment of revelation even more shocking when it finally came. There were other signs, too. Phone calls she didn't answer when I was nearby. Unexplained smiles when she spoke to him privately. Excuses to stay longer at family dinners, small hints that didn't make sense at the time. I could feel tension rising between us, even though we never addressed it directly. I tried to ask her about it, to be honest, to make space for any worries she might have, but she would brush me off with a smile or a laugh that no longer carried the warmth it once had. I began to notice my father in ways I hadn't before, how he lingered in the kitchen when she was around, how he found excuses to call her into his office just to show her something, how he subtly highlighted her achievements in front of me, almost as if reminding me of his own influence. There was a confidence in his gaze, a quiet insistence that I couldn't put my finger on. It made me uncomfortable, but I kept it to myself, convincing myself that it was all in my head. Still, there was one night, a night that will forever be etched into my memory, when the shadows became impossible to ignore. I had come home early from a business trip, eager to surprise Lily. The apartment was dark, the lights dimmed for some reason. I called her name softly. No answer. I moved toward the bedroom, and then I saw them. Not fully, just a glimpse, but enough. Luca standing close behind her, his hand on her back, her head tilted toward him, her expression soft and unreadable. I froze, unable to process what I was seeing. My chest tightened, my mind screamed in disbelief. I wanted to run, to confront them, to demand answers, but I couldn't move. That night, I didn't sleep. I paced the apartment, my thoughts spiraling. I went over every dinner, every conversation, every interaction I had dismissed as innocent. The subtle shadows were there all along, and I had been blind. I had been so wrapped up in my love for Lily, so dependent on my father's guidance, that I had failed to notice the betrayal creeping in right under my nose. It wasn't just the fear of betrayal that gnawed at me, it was the magnitude of it. To be betrayed by the person you trust most in the world is one thing. To be betrayed by the person who brought you into life, who taught you your first lessons about trust and the woman you love, it was unbearable. And yet, even in that unbearable pain, something else began to stir. A quiet, simmering fire of anger and resolve. I knew that I couldn't let it go, that the shadows that had been creeping over my life needed to be faced. I needed answers, and more than that, I needed justice. But how do you confront someone like Luca, a man who commands respect and hides his true intentions behind a charming smile? How do you face Lily, the woman who once promised you forever, who now seemed capable of crossing lines you never thought she would? I didn't know the answers yet. All I knew was that the subtle shadows had grown into something undeniable, something I could no longer ignore. And from that moment on, I began to observe, to piece together the truth, and to plan. The darkness had arrived quietly, but I was learning to navigate it. And I was learning that the person you think you know best, the one you trust above all else, can sometimes be the one who hurts you the most. I wish I could say I was prepared for what I saw next. I wasn't. Nothing could have prepared me. Nothing could have softened the blow or made the betrayal any less raw. That night, the night that changed everything, my world shattered in a single, irreversible moment. It started innocently enough, a casual invitation from Lily to spend the evening together. I remember thinking, finally, some time with her alone, maybe this will smooth over the unease that's been growing for months. I walked into the familiar warmth of my apartment, expecting to see her waiting with that smile that had once been my anchor, my home, but she wasn't alone. Luca was there, my father, standing in the living room with a calm, casual ease that made the air itself feel heavy. And then I saw it. Lily's hand resting on his fingers intertwined in a way that was intimate and unmistakable. The smile on her face, the way she looked at him. It wasn't admiration or friendship. It was desire. My desire for her, my trust in her, meant nothing in that moment. I froze. I couldn't breathe. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to yell, to demand answers. Yet my body betrayed me with paralysis. How could this be real? My own father, and the woman I had loved with everything inside me. Together, my mind refused to accept it. Surely, I was dreaming. Surely, this was some cruel illusion. But then Luca looked at me. That calm, unflinching gaze of his, and I knew it wasn't an illusion. It was real. What is going on? My voice trembled, shaking with disbelief and anger. They both turned to me, and in that silence, the truth landed like a hammer. No words could soften it. No excuses, no apologies, nothing. I saw it in their eyes, Lily's brief flicker of guilt quickly replaced with defiance, and Luca's serene control, the quiet confidence of a man who knows he can manipulate and dominate. Leo, we? Lily started, but she couldn't finish. Her voice faltered under the weight of the truth she couldn't deny. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't need to. Every moment I had dismissed in the past, the lingering touches, the stolen glances, the unexplained smiles, now made sense. Every subtle shadow I had ignored was part of a pattern I had been too blind to see. I remember stepping back, my hands trembling, my chest tight. I wanted to run away, to escape, to erase the world. But I couldn't. The betrayal was too deep, too personal. It wasn't just Lily. It wasn't just my father. It was everything I believed in. My trust, my love, my family, all of it crumbling around me. Leo, I didn't mean for you to find out like this, Lily said finally, her voice soft, almost pleading. But it was too late. Too late for excuses. Too late for love. Too late for forgiveness. I couldn't speak. I could only watch as the life I had imagined, the life I had built with her, dissolved before my eyes. Every plan, every dream, every whispered promise of forever had been a lie. And the man I had idolized, the man I had loved and respected, had taken everything from me. I stumbled out of the apartment, the world spinning around me. The city lights blurred into streaks of color as I ran. ran until my legs ached, until my lungs burned. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I would do when I got there. All I knew was that I couldn't stay, couldn't breathe, couldn't face the unbearable reality of what had happened. And yet, even in that unbearable pain, something else began to awaken a cold. Hard resolve, rage, a desire not just to understand, but to respond. To take back some measure of control over a life that had been stolen from me. I didn't yet know how. I didn't yet know what form it would take. But I knew, with a clarity born from heartbreak, that I could not let this go. The moment of betrayal is not just a discovery, it is a transformation. It changes the way you see the world, the people you trust, even yourself. In that instant, I understood that my life would never be the same. The innocence, the love, the comfort of believing that the people you cherish will never hurt you, all of that was gone. And so, as I wandered the empty streets that night, trying to make sense of the unthinkable, I made a silent promise, not just to myself, but to the boy I used to be, the boy who loved blindly, who trusted without question. I would find a way to make them feel the weight of what they had done. I would exact my revenge. But even as I vowed it, a quiet voice inside me whispered that revenge comes at a cost. That to destroy them would not erase the pain, nor would it return the love I had lost. It would leave scars, ones that would linger long after the satisfaction faded. And yet, I knew I had no choice. Betrayal, I realized that night, is not just an act, it is a wound. And some wounds demand reckoning, no matter how painful it may be. The days after that night were the longest I have ever lived. Every sunrise felt heavy, every familiar sound a reminder of what had been stolen from me. I went through the motions, waking up, eating, going to work, but my mind was trapped in a storm I couldn't escape. Lily's face haunted me. Luca's smug, unreadable expression tormented me. Every memory, every word, every laugh we had shared played over and over like a cruel film I couldn't turn off. I tried to talk to Ava, my only lifeline in this nightmare. She was calm, practical, the kind of friend who could anchor me when I felt myself slipping into despair. "Leo," she said one evening, sitting across from me in my small kitchen, "you can't let them see you break. Not Lily, not Luca, not anyone." I stared at her, drained and hollow. "I don't know if I can," I admitted. My voice cracked, and I felt a tear roll down my cheek. "I don't know if I'll ever stop thinking about it. About them, about her choice. How could she choose him?" Ava reached across the table, gripping my hand firmly. "Because people are weak, Leo. Because desire clouds judgment. But you're stronger than that. You still have control. You decide what happens next." Her words lingered in my mind, but they were not enough to ease the pain. The betrayal had done more than break my heart. It had shaken the very foundation of how I viewed love, trust, and family. Luca wasn't just my father. He was supposed to be my guide, my protector, my moral compass. And Lily, she was supposed to be my partner, my soulmate, the one I had trusted above all. Both of them had taken everything from me in a single, thoughtless act. I spent nights awake, wandering the apartment, replaying every moment I had spent with them. I recalled the subtle signs I had missed, the fleeting glances, the hidden smiles. Every interaction that once seemed innocent now had a sinister undertone. I realized that I had been blind, lulled into a false sense of security by love and familial loyalty. Pain turned into anger, and anger began to sharpen into clarity. I knew I could not allow them to continue unchallenged, but I also knew that blind confrontation would only destroy me further. Revenge had to be careful. It had to be precise. It had to hit where it hurt most. I began to observe, quietly, methodically, every interaction between Luca and Lily, every meeting, every touch, every fleeting look. I took notes in my mind, cataloging moments I had once dismissed, piecing together the extent of their betrayal. The deeper I looked, the more I realized that their connection wasn't just impulsive. It was deliberate, calculated, and if they were that careful, I had to be even more so. During the day, I put on a mask of normalcy. I went to work, met clients, smiled, laughed, and nodded as if nothing had changed. No one could know the storm that raged inside me. I couldn't let them see the cracks I felt in my soul. If they thought I was broken, they would already have one. But the nights were mine. I would sit in silence, my mind a battleground of memories, fantasies of confrontation, and careful strategies. I imagined scenarios where they would be left speechless, humiliated in ways that mirrored the pain they had caused me. I envisioned confronting Lily in public, exposing her duplicity. I imagined conversations with Luca where he realized that control could be wrested from him. Each fantasy was a little escape, a little rehearsal, a sharpening of my resolve. Yet, amidst all this plotting, there was another emotion creeping in, deep, aching grief. Because even as I nurtured the desire for revenge, I knew I would never feel the same joy I once had with Lily. I knew that the love we shared, though tainted now, had once been real. And acknowledging that only made the betrayal sting even more. The irony was bitter. To hurt them, I had to accept that I had already been hurt beyond repair. Ava noticed my quiet obsession. One night, she confronted me. "Leo, don't lose yourself in this. Revenge can't fill the emptiness you feel. It can't bring her back to you, and it can't make your father care. You have to remember who you are, not just what they did to you." I nodded, though inside, I knew she didn't fully understand. I wasn't seeking satisfaction. I was seeking balance. They had taken from me what I held most sacred, and I needed to restore some measure of equilibrium in my life. It wasn't about winning in the conventional sense. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my power, and the life they had attempted to steal. In the quiet moments when the world was asleep, I began to sketch out plans. Not violent plans. I'm not that kind of person. But plans to expose, to dismantle, to make them see that betrayal has consequences. Small things first, subtle manipulations, careful revelations, controlled truths. I would take the pieces of their carefully curated lives and rearrange them so that the pain they caused me reflected back onto them. And yet, even in this spiral of pain and plotting, I felt a strange clarity. The storm inside me, the rage, the heartbreak, it sharpened my mind, honed my focus, and forced me to confront truths I had long ignored. I saw the cracks in Luca's facade, the insecurities beneath his arrogance, the vulnerabilities Lily had tried to hide behind charm and seduction. I realized that their betrayal, though devastating, had opened my eyes to the reality of the people around me. I also realized something more personal. I could never fully trust as I once had. Not without caution, not without scrutiny. Love and loyalty had limits, and I had discovered them the hard way. But this pain, this fire inside me, also reminded me that I was still alive. That even after such betrayal, I could rise, I could act, I could reclaim the narrative of my own life. And so, I began the slow, deliberate process of transforming my heartbreak into action. Each day was a rehearsal, each observation a step toward the reckoning that I knew would come. Revenge wasn't immediate. It couldn't be. It had to be strategic, meticulous, satisfying in its inevitability. And in the quiet of the night, when grief and anger intermingled into a potent fuel, I whispered to myself, they chose wrong, and soon they will understand the cost of their choice. By the time a week had passed since that night, the whirlwind of grief and rage had settled into something colder, sharper, more deliberate. I wasn't consumed by blind fury anymore. I had learned to harness it, to turn it into focus. Pain had become my strategy. Betrayal had become my guide. And revenge was no longer a distant thought. It was a plan taking shape in the quiet corners of my mind. I started small. Not to hurt, not yet, but to test. To understand. Every move I made was calculated, every word carefully measured. I watched Luca and Lily from a distance, noting routines, patterns, and weaknesses, the charming smiles they shared in public, the subtle touches when they thought no one was looking. Everything became a puzzle I was determined to solve. I contacted old friends of my father, people who had known him longer than I had, casually dropping hints, observing reactions. I didn't need to tell anyone the truth yet. I just needed pieces of information, the vulnerabilities beneath Luca's carefully constructed image. A reputation built on control could be exploited if one knew where the cracks lay, and I intended to find every single one. With Lily, it was a different game. I didn't confront her directly. I didn't need to. Every small interaction was a psychological test. A comment here, a compliment there, observing her reactions, the flicker of surprise, discomfort, or overconfidence. I was gathering evidence, mapping the landscape of her deceit. Every smile she gave Luca, Every glance she directed at him when she thought I wasn't watching only strengthened my resolve. During this period, Ava became my anchor. She understood the subtlety required, that revenge could not be rash or emotional if it was to achieve the impact I desired. She helped me plan, not just in strategy, but emotionally, keeping me grounded when grief threatened to undo all the careful patience I had cultivated. I began to reclaim my life in small ways: social appearances, work engagements, casual interactions with people who mattered. I learned to mask the storm inside me with smiles and casual conversation, never letting the world see the betrayal I had endured. My exterior became a mask, a shield, while my mind worked tirelessly on the plans unfolding behind closed doors.